Hello, Mark Roy Larson here for the Dreamcatcher Podcast. Thanks for joining us. My guest is Bob Wischer, and this is his second time here, so welcome
Hey,
back,
thanks for having
Bob.
me back.
So how are you
I'm
doing
doing
today?
great. I'm having a lot of fun today.
Yeah, it's Friday and it's an awesome day. So every day's awesome. It's
And
all
it's
mindset.
not raining
So
here like it is in the rest of the country. So I got that going for me.
yeah, oh my gosh, some of those places it's really bad. I feel for them. I'm one. That's one thing that when we're at where we're at, we shouldn't have to worry about hurricanes.
Me neither.
So that is for sure. So and Bob, you're located
Michigan. So
in
I don't think we've
Michigan.
ever had a hurricane in the Great Lakes.
No, I hope that never happens. So I was telling my wife if there's a hurricane that strong that gets up here, I mean, we're all done for. Well, today this is going to be a little bit different podcast, which I've never done. This one's actually got a theme to it, and Bob and I are going to kind of be both hosts, and we're going to ask each other questions. We're kind of wing it, like we said before, but it's going to be on imposter syndrome. Which before I really got into the personal development area, I had no idea what that was. I kind of in passing maybe had heard of it, but after I found out what it was, I, I've been very much a candidate with imposter syndrome many times in my life. And in fact,
Mhm.
Bob and I just did a thing a little bit ago, and I felt almost like an imposter there because it's like I still get into my head. It's like, why does somebody want to listen to me? Why do I? I feel like I'm an imposter. I don't have anything to say, and it's been very interesting. It's been definitely a journey, and this journey continues with the podcast and the imposter syndrome there too. So Bob, what do you think about imposter syndrome?
I think it's a shield that people put up. Um,
Okay,
we have
yeah.
it's like a defense mechanism. Feel so we feel so disconnected. We feel like we're not enough. Um, we feel judged. We feel,
Mm-hmm.
all those things. And what's popping into my head the most right now is actually like a Robin Williams type. You know, Robin
Oh,
always
really? Interesting.
Robin was so funny because he was in so much pain, and
Yeah.
it was almost like his that persona of his funny, that the super funny Robin that you would just die laughing anytime you heard him.
Right.
That was I think, and I haven't done a ton of background on it, but that was his persona. That was his forward facing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it was somewhat of an imposter because
Right.
we know how much behind that mask he was hurting. It also reminds me of a book, and I don't know if you've read this one, called Masks of Masculinity, um, by Lewis Howes. He talks
I
about all of
haven't.
these. There's
Okay.
it's been a couple of years since I read it, but I think there's 9 different masks that men. It's specifically about the masks that men wear, but there's like 9 different masks that wear. One of them is the comedian mask, and that's where Robin was. But then there's like the hero mask, and
Wow.
like I said, it's been a minute since I read it, um, but that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We feel inadequate, so we put up these facades and we act like somebody else, and that's where, like you said, you feel that inside yourself, but it's really
I
just,
do.
it's your way to cope with the world.
That is so interesting. And yeah, Robin, I mean, so talented and such you really didn't see, he had a mask on, that's for sure. So, I wonder if there's a
Yeah,
podcast mask. Maybe that's mine. Is I, so,
podcaster mask.
but yeah, I have run. Yeah. Uh,
It's like
I'm coming up on the
podcast mask.
episode and yeah, yeah, that, that too. You have the pop filter and everything. But um, but yeah, it's just like I'm 3.5 years into this, and 225th episode coming up on the 11th of October, and I still don't think it's like, how am I getting that far? It's just like my brain is like, you're doing that, but my brain does not believe that I really belong there, and I'm better. I think of just doing it, but it's still. I don't know if it comes from by being younger, and I used that as a defense mechanism to protect myself because of being the bully, emotionally bullied, and everything. But it is something that I deal with almost daily. It's just like, yes, you do belong there, or speaking, because I'm getting more and more people that maybe want me to speak on stage, and it's like, which really, really, the imposter syndrome really comes up there, and so I mean, how do you think you deal with it, in your opinion?
Me personally,
Yeah, how would you? If I mean, I don't know, have you ever suffered from it?
I'm sure I've done it, and I'm not sure if I've really been. I mean, I think probably when I first started coaching, for sure, right? Because you never really feel like you know enough to have this responsibility of another person's problems and situation in your hands. Um, but really,
Hmm.
yeah, and it's taken a little bit to realize that that I'm not responsible for the person on the other side of the phone or on the other side of the video call or whatever, but I
Right.
am there to hold the space and give them somewhere to go, give them, a lot of coaches refer to it as a container, create a space that the person that you're working with feels comfortable and protected and not judged and all that thing, so they can actually, because that really is what allows you to be able to get some of those things out of your head and out of your heart and out of your soul that you maybe been struggling with, kind of like you right now with this,
Right.
admitting that you've felt like an imposter almost every day. That's pretty big statement to say that,
Pretty
somebody
much.
that's been doing this for 3 years, it feels like it, and I guess the question I have for you on that is what if you
Okay.
are feeling like an imposter, what keeps you going? What's keeping you doing it?
Yeah. It is such a deep rooted thing that I want to get over that. That was one thing when I was in school, up through high school. I was so quiet, and that is when I got so aggravated with myself. I hated myself, and I wanted to do whatever it took to start talking. And that I still can feel that determination that I was not going to be that person anymore. And that is part of it that comes up. That determination is like, you're doing this. This podcast. I like doing the podcast really well, and it's just like, no, you're not gonna quit. And it's just like, you're going to do this. And if I didn't like it, I probably would. But I love doing this. I love meeting people like you and doing people around the world where I help, and I want to help people do it with this. But it's that determination that I am going to help people. God put me here to show my light to the world, and it's that determination that, because the first week in college, I went to college, and I became talkative. I joined a fraternity. I mean, it was just like somebody flipped a switch, and it was definitely a determined. It was a that was going to happen. I was like, I'm doing this, whatever it takes, and it was struggle, to say the least, to become that person that fast. But yeah, my parents couldn't believe the first time I came home. It's like, wow, college changed you. But and it was good. But it is just a determination that I am going to do this. I have my message for the world, and I know that feeling that I had from going from high school to college that I pull from, and that is, I've got to do it even on those days where those days where I don't want to, those days I would rather just say, let's postpone the podcast or something like that. That, which would be easy, but a terrible decision, because I would probably, if I did it once, I'd probably keep doing it. And I, no, it's that determination. I have to pull up my bootstraps
Yeah.
and just do it. And yeah,
And
that's pretty much it.
the part about that, the part about that I love is that you're making a conscious choice every day to take action
Yep.
and to
Yeah,
overcome
that is
that,
true. It is.
the fear of judgment, the fear failure, the fear of whatever. You're just saying, don't care. I'm making a choice and I'm taking
Yes.
action. And there's so many people in the world
Yes.
right now that are that fear of taking action, or that fear of the judgment, or the fear of whatever, is just, it's got them stuck. It's got them, they're debilitated. To I can't do anything. I'm afraid to do anything. I'm afraid to fail.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the one man I mentioned to you in our last little podcast thing is that I had the conversations with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know his biggest thing is he's afraid to fail, because he's always been, the guy, right? Through high school and things like that. He was always the guy. Now, in our later years, he's realized he's not the guy, and it's got to be debilitating that he can't be perfect like he always was.
Yeah. And I can relate with that too, because I was very much a perfectionist. I couldn't do anything if it wasn't done perfectly right. And I'm better at that. I still struggle with that too. It's just like, no, good is better than, done is better than perfect, and it's just like, because you can just, you can spend all your time trying to get it to perfect. And yeah, it is, but it is conscious decision.
Yeah.
That person comes and visits me almost daily. That is the perfectionist, the little boy who remembered all that stuff when, and it's like, yeah, you can come visit, but you're not having a say today.
Yeah.
And you would think after all these many decades that would be gone. So, but it's still there.
That's what one of our standards in Men Becoming Better Men is excellence. Give 100% your best, not perfection.
Yes.
So as long as you're giving your best every day,
amen.
You don't have to be perfect. You can try to be excellent. You can try to be perfect, but to be able to, to set that bar that high where you have to be perfect every day, again, that's what causes that stagnation and that the roadblock that people just like, if I can't be perfect, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to take action. I'm just going to sit here and do nothing.
Which is for a very not a good life, that's for sure, for anybody around you, because people always tell me that people are waiting for me to do. What's that, Bob?
I said it's not a lot of fun.
So, but no, it isn't. So, no, and people are saying people are waiting for me to become my best self. The people out there that I haven't met yet are waiting for me to get to the level where I can show, I don't know, my ripple or whatever like that. So Bob, I just got to thinking, for people that didn't watch the first podcast we did. So how your group that you do? How did you start that, and how long you've been doing that? And what is your group?
The group that I've had for the longest is the Men Becoming Better Men group. We started 5 years ago in May. We're past our 5-year anniversary this year.
Okay.
How I started it was I realized that there was no existing groups of men in my area. I went on a couple of websites and a couple of apps, and I was finding women's groups all over the place. And because I had read a book, I can't remember if I told you this before, but I had read a book called The Truth About Men, and he talked about how men need to be in community with each other. We need to have real relationships where we talk about real stuff and be able to get the things off of our chest that we can't necessarily tell our wives or our mothers or the women in our life, because they're not capable of handling it, but they're just, men are tuned to hear what men are going through, and to sit with a man and go through, unload that kind of stuff off of your chest is way more refreshing and healing than talking to anybody else about it. And so we started a group 5 years ago.
I agree.
Basically, that's the big part of the group is to have 10 or 15 minutes of unabated time for each man during the course of the meeting to be able to talk about whatever he wants to talk about. If he wants to talk about how horrible his job is, or that his marriage is falling apart, or whatever, it just gives him a place to get that off his chest and find some clarity maybe get some questions, maybe get some feedback about, maybe the man maybe he's not being a good man. Maybe he's not living up to the standards that he should. He needs to be a better man for his marriage, and maybe that'll help it fix. Or maybe it's just maybe his wife is a complete psychopath, like he says, and it could be any number of things. But to be able to take ownership of,
Right.
again, like I said, your actions and the things that you're doing, and the decisions that you're making, because you can decide to put up with that stuff. You can decide to make changes. You can, like you said, you decide to do the podcast every day, and we're responsible,
Yes.
as well as another one of our standards. You're responsible for your own well-being. So if you don't like something, you have the power to change it. You just make a decision to change it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you do have that power. And it's one of my things, like we're talking, having people realize their power or take back their power. Maybe they don't even know they had the power. So
Yeah.
so how many people are in your group? Is this local group, or do you do around the world, or just locally in Michigan? Or
We have a local group. We get there's probably around 40 members of the group, but we get anywhere around 20 to 24
okay.
that show up every 2 weeks, and that's where I've expanded now to an online. I'm creating an online version of it. It's got a lot of the same tools and a lot of the same things that we do in a very much more condensed format. But that started a couple weeks ago, and it's going really well.
Awesome. No, I mean that is so. So talking about imposter syndrome, and if I may ask this, do you run into people men that you're dealing with that suffer from imposter syndrome?
I'm
Have you?
Yeah, I'm sure they're probably. Well, actually, I know there's men that have never let anybody else behind the mask either. They're still being the imposter.
Wow.
Actually, I can't think of off the top of my head of any particular man I've worked with that has come out and said, "Yeah, I'm I'm being this way," but I'm sure there are, and I hope they check this podcast out and realize that what that is doing, and that it's not necessary.
Right.
Everybody has a God given right to be themselves and to do what
Amen. Yeah.
they and their God is prompting them to do on a daily basis, and be yourself and follow your
Wow.
follow your purpose.
Yes. Yes. On that too. So, I mean, how when you're working with them, I mean, like fellowship, or just being kind, or just the camaraderie. Is that how somebody? I mean, how do you come out if you've never been from behind the mask? How do you get somebody to I mean trust, or I don't know what the word I'm thinking, to come from behind the mask?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, a lot of trust. You got to build up the trust for sure. That's why we usually have, we let guys come multiple times before they make a commitment to staying in the group, to build that trust, build that that fellowship, that bond, and then once they do commit to coming, then that's where we build the camaraderie. Because we do a lot of social stuff and things like that too. A lot of volunteering. We have some organizations that we volunteer at.
Nice.
And yeah.
Very. I love that. I mean, so you meet and do like once a month where you get together and go volunteer or something, or is it on a plant, or is it just when? Um, I'm sure when your meetings are planned, but when you do stuff.
Yeah. The meetings are every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And in the case of the online group, we meet every week. But yeah, we have a person that's in charge of finding opportunities for volunteering, and one man that's in charge of doing social events and things like that. So they're pretty, maybe once a month they do something on both fronts, volunteering, and it just depends on the time of the year too. Because like summer is a lot easier. There's organizations to volunteer and more to do outside and things like that.
No, I could see that. So you were doing working towards going online with this. So worldwide, or how? What is your
Oh yeah.
goal on that with being
Well, I
online? I'm
mean,
sure some goals.
yeah, worldwide's tricky because we meet at 7 p.m. Eastern time in the U.S. So depending on
Okay.
how late or how early you would want to participate, but yeah, um, yeah, it's in weeknight evenings here, and yeah, so it could be worldwide. We've got a guy from Massachusetts that just joined the group. We've got one in Florida. Hey, there was a guy that was gonna in Kansas City. He was gonna join, but he ended up not. He ended up doing something else. But so yeah, all over the states would be my goal. I'd love to be able to spread it around the country and just give it. I just want to give men the experience of knowing what it's like to have somebody listen to you
Yes.
and have somebody care.
Yes.
Because I went through decades in my life, Mark, where I didn't feel like I could talk to, didn't have somebody I felt like I could talk to and unburden my soul to, and it's just
Yeah.
it's so needed because we keep all that stuff locked up
It
in
is.
there, and then
Yeah.
like I did 10 years ago, I I've heard the phrase depression is caused by being too strong for too long, and that's exactly what happened in my case. I
Wow.
was trying to be so strong and take on so many things and dealing with stress at work and family and everything else, and it just wore me down, and I got to a point where I just was going through the motions every day for a couple of years until I realized that something had to change.
And I've never heard that. I mean, that is um, very yeah. That statement, I'm going to never forget that statement. I mean, that is true too.
Yeah.
So I love that you started this. So do people go through? I mean, is there a timeline, or does each person go through what you're doing with them on their individual time? That how much they need for help, or how does it? What is the timeline for somebody that is in your group? Can they stay there
Yeah. Oh
forever if they
yeah.
want to,
Yeah. We've
or
we've
is
had
there
we've
like
had some of the
okay,
same guys have been around since the beginning. Been hanging around for 5 years. Yeah, and everybody's really going at their own pace,
that's
and they bring what they have, and they take what they need, and it's yeah. There's really no requirement for it. Now my online group is designed to be about a year. It's actually mirrors my one-on-one
okay,
coaching program to as far as the subject matters and
okay,
things that we cover. So, for a guy that comes in month three, he's of this first go around. If he comes in month three, it's going to take him a minute to get all the way back around. Um, but yeah, that's the intent of the online group is to follow my year long coaching program.
perfect. And I mean, it is. I'm glad you're doing this because men suffer in silence. We're supposed to be men. We're supposed to be tough. We're not supposed to really show, all this. And it's. I think that is so awesome that you're showing that. Yeah, we can. And especially when they have men
Yeah,
have another man to talk to because they know that more likely they're going to be able to relate with that. And
yeah.
I love that. So you can have any satellites. You can have a satellite in Nebraska or any other state, or
I've
have you thought
actually
about it?
I've tried it with a couple different people that I've met from other states.
Really?
Try to
Okay.
take it on the road and have them create it. Actually, I've probably half written the book at this point about my how to do it book.
Cool.
So I'm going to continue
Okay.
to work on that. Maybe I'll get that published hopefully someday, and um, then guys can
Awesome.
can go take it and create it in their neck of the woods. And I'd love to have
Love that.
at least to be able to spawn
Yeah.
that off and give that
Yeah.
to the men of
No.
the country and the world, even just like you said, we get into those
You do.
mindsets, and really what that has done is when we get into that, it pushes us into that's what all that anxiety and stress and disconnection pushes us into the addictions. whether it's drinking or drugs or alcohol or porn or
Right.
sex or whatever.
Right.
And those are the weights that are dragging men down, and then
Yep.
they ended up snuffing themselves out, right? So to be able to get
Yeah.
connected, be able to have somewhere to unburden some those anxieties and fears and excuse me, everything else keeps men up
Yeah.
and keeps them from dropping out. And what I heard a stat the other day.
Yeah.
What was it?
Okay.
It was like 70. No, it was a figure on. It was a suicide figure that I hadn't heard yet, and it's not coming to me. It's in my notebook somewhere. But it was the rate of men's suicide is just absolutely absurd.
Yeah. No, I just there's just a suicide. I mean, there's so much suicide that goes on in this country. I recently had some people that are just in an event, I guess it was last Saturday, on children, committing suicide.
Yeah.
And they said that this is in Raleigh, North Carolina, that it was the number 2 cause of preteens was suicide. And in the United States, it was number 5. And it's just like this gal, she said, these are babies. They're still, and how do you get at that age to wanting to take your life? There's something I'm so glad you're doing it with men. I mean, I can't wait for the day that you can have it all in every state. And if there's anything I can do for Nebraska, hey, just give me a call or whatever. I mean, I'm just because and I talk to so many men. They come up to me in this area, and they mainly because they know me, but they're so lost. They know what they don't know what men are supposed to be like anymore. Men used to be the head of the household and all this stuff, and now it's like, do I kind of be quiet? And they're just lost in their role. I find a lot of times the roles are so ambiguous anymore, and it's sad. I'm really glad I grew up where I did.
No,
But it's just
the funny thing apart. The funny thing about that is a lot of the reason women are a lot of the reasons I've learned that women are leaving men and divorcing them is because they're not being leaders. The women want men to be leaders. They don't want to take on a leadership role. They're not created for that. I mean, the Bible, right? Men were created to lead. Women are created to care for and nurture. And when we start crisscrossing those roles, I mean, as much as I love my kids and I wanted to care for and nurture them, that's not my job. That's what was their mother's job. And for when we start crossing roles and women start leading and men start doing the caring and nurture thing, that's where we're getting all.
We're just causing a lot of confusion and people not knowing what to do, and it's confusing for the kids that they do have too in those marriages or not marriages, or people not getting married. And I have loved being married. I mean, I've been married for 33 years, but it just I was before this it was getting started, but so much of this confusion and it's just I feel for them, and that just makes me more want to do stuff all the time to help them and guide them. And it's interesting that you brought that up because I listened to this program actually when I'm on my way to do some podcasts in another town, and that was the topic yesterday about men, in their role and from and it was just like this is 2 days in a row that has come up, and I guess God's definitely putting that into my mind here. So, but I also, how many people don't know God? They don't know the Bible. They don't, they've never been to church, and churches have changed so much from when I grew up. But it's just like, if nothing else, I tell them it's like pray. If nothing else, pray. I mean, if you haven't read the Bible, and there are so many different versions of the Bible anymore, just get started. Or go to like a men's group. I don't know if you guys talk about that kind of thing in your groups or in your group, the Bible and stuff, or do you stay away from
that?
You do?
No, my group's not. It's not. It's we don't talk about it a whole lot. It's more of a non-denominational, type of group,
Definitely
but
see that. And that might cause,
attend church, and I have groups within my church where we talk about that stuff. That's just
yeah.
another aspect
And
of
it
my
is.
work.
And that's, I mean, yeah. I mean, they give you so much direction. And the people you meet at the church, that can guide you and help you too if you basically need help up or, some help. Actually, we have some friends
Yeah,
that are in the church, and it was interesting because we go out for eat and we talk a lot about their church, but they don't want us to be members because they want it to be more free. That so it's kind of interesting because we have our church and then we have this church and it's interesting to see the other side of the church too there. But so no, I mean, there's so many. There are avenues to help people today, but I think so many people don't think it's for them, or maybe it's imposter syndrome. It's like I don't belong there, and I
you
can
don't feel
understand
like you
that
do.
too. And yeah, but yeah, it's just the help is out there, and we we need to be out there helping people so they can have a great life, so they can do the ripple and share that with other people, so they don't do suicide, because that is such a loss. I mean, all the good that those people could have done for themselves and the world. So, 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 Bob, before we end the podcast, anything else you'd like to share with the guests today?
I think this has been a great conversation. I love it. It's just anytime we can inspire somebody to get out of their own way, get out of their head, look for help, look for
Yes.
connection.
Amen.
That's what I'm here to do, is
Yeah.
just get people connected to themselves and other people, and stay out of the enemy's sights.
Yeah, exactly. That's for sure. So, but well, Bob, thank you for the second episode of the Dreamcatcher podcast. I enjoyed. I think I enjoyed this thing even more than the first one. So, we'll just have to. Well, we'll keep in touch. I'm sure. I want to see what
I
you
guess
got coming
I
up
get
next
better with
too.
age.
So, so okay. So, well, anyway, Bob, I'll let you go, and we'll talk
All right,
soon.
thanks, buddy. See you soon.